Welcome to the Scott Harness Podcast.
Well, how is everybody today? I hope you're having an incredible Tuesday morning or whenever you're watching this podcast. We are going today talk about some really cool stuff. We're going to talk about money. Now, I know money doesn't sound interesting, but the crowd that's in the room today is going to make it interesting. In fact, as we were discussing it before we really came on, there were some hilarious moments. So I think we're going to have a fun time with it. As always, one of the things that we love to encourage you to do is be sure and like this, share this, the podcast. That's how we get the information out there. Crush that like button, and if you're on YouTube, hit the bell, and we'll get notifications out to you as soon as we publish something new. Today, though, we are going to discuss openly. We're going to talk about a perspective on money. So we're going to talk about money, and we're going to talk about how it affects us, and what as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, what should we be thinking about? What does that look like? What is money? Because I think there's a bunch of false impressions or false ideas about money, and so we're going to discuss that today. And what's an issue with money? Kendall, what do you see? What do you see as one of those things that we need to be thinking about when it comes to money?
Yeah, I think money has to, you got to kind of talk through money with some guiding principles, especially for Christians, because there's kind of two prevailing thoughts with money when you talk to Christians about it. It's like there's either the group of people that says that money's just bad and you shouldn't really have it, and even with pastors, you're like, hey, it's kind of like this thing that's kind of seen as kind of taboo, and you're like, hey, you shouldn't really have money, and people who have a lot of money are bad people, and those types of things. Or the other side of it, which is kind of the second extreme, that they sort of over glorify money. And you see these churches that are like super into money, and they're talking about, buying jumbo jets and stuff like that. And there's these conversations kind of like, which one is okay? And for me, as I've looked at scripture, especially over this last week and kind of studying for this podcast, I go, man, I think somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's wrong to have money. I don't think there's anything wrong with money. I think money is a tool, like a car or anything else. It's like, can a car get you in trouble? Absolutely. If you go 75 down Kill Avenue, they're going to pull you over and you're going to get a ticket. That can get you in trouble. If you drive drunk or whatever, you can get in trouble. But the car itself is not bad. And having one, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, what you do with it could get you in trouble. And I think money's the same way. And it's kind of a guiding principle for me, at least with money and things like that.
I think among Christians, one of the things we love to do is we love to go to one compartment or the other, and they're usually pretty extreme. Yeah. So you've got the poverty people that are like, if you're a follower of Jesus, or if you're like, really love God, then you've got to be really poor.
Yeah, you got to be broke. And if you own a nice car, my gosh.
Yeah, or then the other group that usually has big hair, they're like, if you don't have money, then you're not right with God. So it's literally you're
the only way God's going to bless you in your life is through your finances.
That's right.
That's the only way they believe.
Money. Yeah. So one of the principles that we're going to kind of unpack today, and at least sort of see the accuracy of it, is that money serves us as we serve God and other people, as a perspective. So money serves us as we serve God and other people. Let me give you a verse of scripture for us to look at that gives us some context here. In Mark chapter 12, verse 30, Jesus is asked this really serious question. And here's the question. He's asked, what is the greatest commandment? In other words, what is the most important thing that we should be doing with our life? Yeah. Which is a good question. Yeah. I mean, if you're in front of the Son of God, and he's walking around in the flesh there, and you're like, hey man, it's Q&A time.
Sure.
What do I need? What's the most important deal? And Jesus doesn't step away from it. Here's what he says. He says, you got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and all your strength. And so in other words, you got to love God with everything you've got. Then the second is equally important. He said, you got to love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. And so what Jesus says is, in essence, he says, you know what? You should love God, and then you should love people. And one of the reasons why that I think that Jesus has a lot to say about money, and one of the reasons why that I think he's trying to give us a warning, is that money is probably one of the greatest competitors for our heart. It competes with our love for God, and it definitely competes for our love for people. Yeah. And so he gives us a few warnings about that.
Well, and even in this verse, he's saying, they're kind of coming to Jesus saying, what's the best thing we can do? Which I think is what the Pharisees think that they focused on, was what things do I do? Give me A, B, and C, Jesus, and I'll do those things. Like, what's the most important thing that I do? What's the most important commandment? Is it lying? Is it cheating? Is it stealing? Is it, worshiping other gods? What's the most important thing? And instead of giving them a thing to do, Jesus gives them like a mindset to have, where he's like, hey, okay, I'm not going to give you a thing. Instead, you should put God first,
Sure.
In your mind, in your body, in your strength, and all these things with your heart. And I think what Jesus is saying ultimately is that the biggest problem is that in our world, everything competes for your heart. Everything competes for your heart. Everything wants your attention. Your money wants your attention. Your bank account wants your attention. All these things do. And often I think money is not seen as bad, and I don't think it is bad, but I think the focus and that love of money could get you in trouble. We'll talk about that more later. But I think right now, the biggest thing is that what Jesus is saying is that, hey, you got to love God first. That's the most important thing. And anything else that occupies your heart is going to be a problem, even if it's not a bad thing. If you have a love for mandarin oranges, if it competes for your heart, that's a bad deal.
Yeah, I don't have that.
I don't either. No. I don't know where mandarin oranges came. Mandarin orange, whatever.
Mandarin. They came from Mandarin. You ever been to Mandarin? Have you ever seen that? You ever looked on the globe and found Mandarin?
No,
me neither. Anyway, but talking about money, one of the key issues is that money can use us as opposed to us using it. And I think that's what Jesus is trying to say is I don't want you to have this script flipped where money starts using you. So, the love of money is a really, really big issue. And it's something that, that God puts in front of us. So let's talk about some ways that we use money or money uses us. And I think the one that probably stands out the most that I want us to unpack, and I don't know if we'll even get past this today, is debt. Yeah. Debt's a dirty word. Can't have debt. Debt. Bad. Yeah. So debt is savings in reverse. It's basically buying stuff today you can't really afford, paying for it tomorrow, and having to pay whatever it costs to buy it, in the future. Luke 16:33. Okay. Another verse. Jesus, here's what he says. He says, no one can serve two masters. So he gets right down to the crux of this money issue. He says, for you will hate one and you will love the other. You will be devoted to one and you'll despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. Now that's a very pointed scripture, and that's a verse that people use. Now, this is a verse of scripture where Jesus outlines the issue, and this is the issue with money, is money cannot become the subject of your life. Right. Now, when I read Luke 16:33, and I've thought about it, and you guys think about this as well. When I read that verse, I'm programmed to believe that money is a problem for wealthy people. Sure. Because you don't think that a poor person, if I'm in
problems with money.
Yeah, because I don't have any. Right. But Jesus doesn't say that it's the money. Right. What he says it's the one that you're serving. Right. It's the one that you think about. It's the one that's the subject of your life. That becomes an issue. So think about this for a second. I can be impoverished and be so focused on money that money is my master. And it's the very issue that Jesus is talking about. Yeah. I could 80% of Americans, I've just read this just the other day because of all the changes in politics and everything else and all the chaos that our government has, because our government's like a bunch of toddlers. They can't get it together. But when you look at all that combined, what's happened is 80% of Americans are genuinely concerned, and they think about it a significant amount of time losing what they have. Yeah. So that becomes money, and what I have becomes the subject. It becomes the subject of my life.
Or the way that my life operates right now, at the cost that it operates at. There's this fear of rising interest rates and things like that. And you're like, man, there's this fear that like I won't be able to purchase the house that I want to purchase or make the moves that I want to make as a person, and so I could definitely see that fear being not just losing what you have as in what you currently have in investments or whatever goes away, but also losing what you have as in the potential to do what you want to do in the future.
Well, and even progress, because I think we all got cursed with this. I don't know. We could look around and talk about it. Yeah. But I mean, you want to be better off than your parents. Yeah, sure. And you remember the well, you didn't get this because I didn't say it to you. You had a good parent. No, but Montana, did you get this deal like when your parents said, look, I want you to have more than we ever had?
Yes, all the time. They wanted me to have more than they have.
Yeah, and and you know what? Parents aren't doing it because they're like, hey, you know what I want to do? I want to curse you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, it's not like a bad thing.
No.
It's not like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, here's what I want to do is I want to screw you up so the rest of your life you're pursuing trying to do more than we did. And, your parents, when they tell you that, they're like in their 40s or 50s or whatever. Yeah. They've got a lifetime of wealth maybe,
True.
Unless you got deadbeat parents or something. And if you do, there's a whole other issue. But the deal is that they tell you that, and they've been gathering and garnering together this money, and they've been working in their career field for a long time. And then this kid's like, oh my gosh, what I need to do is I need to hurry up and get out of here because, mom and dad live in X number of square footage and mom and dad drive whatever.
Cars, yeah.
And so you kind of get that curse, and all of a sudden money becomes the subject. And, scripture uses a word which we don't use very much. It's a word called idolatry. Yeah. Yep. That's where, and not the Dollar Tree, that's different. The Dollar Tree is something completely different. Yeah, that's where you get your cheapy stuff. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I'm going down to Dollar idolatry. You're not actually worshiping
Idolatry.
Satan. so anyway, but idolatry is idolatry.
Stop
I
it.
know I can't stop. I'm now stuck on it. You got idolatry.
You got to do something else.
No, I love that statement. Anyway, but idolatry in itself is actually where we begin to place the emphasis on something and make it our God.
That's good. That's
And so what Jesus is saying, he's saying, hey, you don't need to do that. Debt is one of those things that affect us that way.
Well, and again, I think what you're saying is true too, is that, it's debt. But I think it's, again, the problem is not the money itself, it's the focus. And I think that, it's like there's people that are like, oh, well, we don't have any debt. We've eliminated all our debt. Kind of like Montana was gloating earlier. We don't have any debt. We don't have any, we've never had $1 debt in our lives. Anyway, but I mean, it's like so it's things where it's like, but even then, I think it's, again, it's
you
the
can
focus.
give it back to Montana. You got to put up with that.
She will. Listen, Montana can get scary. That's why I don't look at her sometimes when I'm talking to her about that kind of stuff. I just kind of throw it out there and then run. And so I think that for a lot of people, though, the focus becomes the problem, which is that, there's people that are sold out to like the Dave Ramsey thing. And I think that's awesome. I think it's a great way. We'll talk about it in just a second when we talk about paying down debt. But even in that, I think there's a potential for that thing, for the focus on paying down that debt to take over your life.
Oh, yeah.
And you to become so consumed with that, it becomes an idol that it's like, oh, well, I can't think about anything else. When I'm laying down at night, all I can think about is saving money. When I'm waking up in the morning, all I can think about is more ways to save money. And ultimately, people want to save money and they want to go through the Dave Ramsey thing because ultimately what they really want is something else. They want to get this other thing, whether it be financial freedom or the ability
peace
to buy
of mind.
things they want. Yeah, peace of mind or whatever. They're looking, they're searching for something, and they think that thing, whatever it may be, will provide something more, which ultimately leads us into debt usually, because we're like, if I get this car, if I just get this car, if I just get this car, if I just get this house, if I just get this house, if I just get this house, and all of a sudden we get it, and it's like, oh, now I've got this debt. I think, again, it's not necessarily the debt or even the money that's the problem. It's really the focus on those things that causes the issue.
We did a debt workshop one time. Stacey and I went to one, and they went to talking about washing out your Ziploc bags. And I looked over at her, and that was it. I could tell she was done.
They washed out the sandwich bags?
Yeah, reuse them.
No way.
Hey, don't make fun of it because there's people that do it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying that for us, that
What do they do with their toilet
I looked
paper?
at
Never mind,
easy. They don't use any.
It's been a weird year.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
But anyway, but I mean, there's things that people try to do to try to save money. Now let's walk through this a little bit further before we get back to the idolatry. Money's supposed to serve us. Yeah. Now we're talking about debt, so let's talk, because really the biggest, probably the biggest obstacle that we face in community in our lives is debt. That's one of those things that really does rob from us. So
I think I've got some stats. I'll pull them up as you're talking, but I've got some stats on debt that actually they're pretty mind blowing when you look at it. Keep going.
So my question is that one group of people, they say, hey, look, you can't have any debt. You're not allowed to have any debt. And we talked about this earlier. Montana, you talked about there was a difference in debt. So give us that.
We've never had debt in our lives.
Give us the word. give us the words of wisdom on this debt and how you differentiate between good and bad.
Well, I think that there's expected debt when you become an adult, which I don't think I'm there yet, but you have this expected debt, like house and cars and things that you just have to succeed and be an adult in life, where you can't you can't save as a high schooler to buy a house. It's just never going to happen.
Sure.
But then I think there's debt that it's like extra that you don't have to have, such as like having a boat or having like multiple credit cards.
Shots.
I think that's just extra and stuff that you don't.
Great. Noah was in the Bible.
Remember? Noah had a boat.
Noah
saved the world.
Noah's a godly man. Continue on. But yeah.
Keep going. Because I got something up you. Go ahead.
I guess if you need a boat as for you to be an adult, then I guess you can get a boat. Everybody's got to decide where that line is, that realistic line is.
There it is. If you need a boat to feel validated, I guess, you get a boat.
For sure.
I love it. Now listen to this. Americans, so the difference that you're drawing there, and I think it's a good difference actually, is the difference between like things that you finance that you really would be very difficult to save and buy, a house, a car, even a boat, if you do clear it up in your finances to get a boat or something like that. That's a very difficult expense to save for in a reasonable amount of time. If you're going to save up, for a house.
It's 100 years for Noah.
It was 125 years for Noah. But it's you're sitting there and you're going, okay, there's these pieces of debt that you can't pay for, but then there's other pieces of debt. And I think we need to focus, for instance, credit cards. And I want to read you a stat. It says Americans hold over $1 trillion in credit card debt right now. That is, according to the Federal Reserve, $1 trillion in credit card debt. In September of 2020, the Federal Reserve reported that American consumer debt, which is mainly credit card debt, consumer debt doesn't contain business-to-business debt or debt that businesses accumulated. It contains only consumer debt, and the most common one of consumer debt is credit cards. It says the Federal Reserve reported that American consumer debt reached a new height, this is in September of 2020, of $4.2 trillion. So that's car debts mostly and things like that. This does not include any business debt. And the cool thing is this, in quarter two, which is April 1 to June 1 of 2020, rolling consumer debt and credit cards saw a 30.8% decrease right around the time of the first stimulus check. So it looks like most Americans took that first stimulus and paid off a lot of credit card debt, which is actually kind of cool. The sad part is that unfortunately, rolling consumer debt saw a 4.8 increase for the year of 2020, even with this huge decrease in quarter two. So we saw a 30% decrease in quarter two, but we made all that back and 4.8% more throughout finishing out 2020. So
I think that when you look at debt, I think there's a reasonable perspective that you have to have about debt. I think there's the big distinguishing marks are, number one, there's some people who have accumulated debt, and they accumulated debt because they couldn't make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They did the best that they could.
Nothing they could do.
You got a single mom. She's doing everything she can possibly do. She's working that job or maybe two.
Yep.
Childcare is crazy expensive. And so you put a child in daycare or whatever else, and then she's living in a modest home, and she may or may not get help from the dad. And single dads have the same problem. Single income families are really, really, it's difficult in America to make it. And then she comes in and there's water in the floor. Oh, the hot water tank's gone.
Yep.
And so there she is, oh gosh, I've got to get that. So then she has to get that. And then the one of the tires, she's driving those Maypops, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's not a name brand, but
it's not Maypops, it's probably Will Pop.
Gonna pop. And so she puts tires on the car, doesn't have the money. And so
the water heater, and after that you've got
a couple few $1,000
credit cards maxed
pretty
out
easily. You run that up. And I think one of the things that happens to us is our mind shifts gears. And maybe we run up additional debt for no reason. But I'll say this though: there's a ton of people who are in debt at this point because of a lot of things outside of themselves.
Absolutely.
And so that's one type of debt. I think the second type of debt is the want debt. And I think that's that debt where when I want something more, I want to upgrade.
We confuse the need with the want.
What I like is I'd like to have a bigger, I want that 75-inch TV or whatever. And so what happens is we run some debt up that way, because rather than going, hey, you know what, this is going to be the reward of a season of time where we're going to save some money, and we're going to wait and we're going to buy this thing. What we do is we go, gosh, it's there, it's on sale, and it's got no interest.
And I want it now.
Yes.
I think now is the difference. It's debt allows us to shrink the timeline of when we can have that thing.
Well, and I think the even a greater question that we have to look at as good stewards of what God's given us is that we have to ask the question, help differentiate between that need and a want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a 50-inch TV, but I like the 75.
Yeah, 75's cool.
Oh my gosh, and it's what I want.
4K LED.
Hey, you know what? I've got the old iPhone.
Yeah.
Oh, I did notice. Or I might want
upgraded.
might want the new one or what have you. And so
paid cash.
But do you need? Yeah, but
I know what you mean, though.
And that's good though.
Yeah.
But you look at it and you go, do I need that? And I think that the biggest problem for me in my past at different times is being able to distinguish between need and want.
Yeah,
I think there's a group of people out there that they're not distinguishing between need and want. They're distinguishing between necessity.
Yeah.
And they're having to try to figure that out. And so I think debt's a big issue for us to talk about, because one of the things the Bible tells us is that the debtor is enslaved.
Yeah.
They're enslaved. And so what happens is your debt begins to dictate your life. And that's the part we want to try to work through.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, whatever got us here. Let's just say just terrible spending habits. Let's say someone might have lost their job.
Yeah.
And I would say when you look at that stimulus thing, let me tell you what I think happened with the stimulus thing. What happened with the stimulus thing was it wasn't really enough to supply the need.
Yeah.
It just was a little bit of a payment. And people said, hey, I'm gonna pay some stuff off. But then next month, because their job wasn't happening,
They're right back in the same spot.
Or worse.
Yeah, or worse off, yeah,
I mean, someone says, well, we got $1,600 or whatever it was, how long does that last in the real world?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's talk about a house payment.
Maybe.
Yeah. If you got teenagers, that's the food bill.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
True.
I mean,
if you
they're
got
like
2-year-olds, that's the food bill.
Man alive. So
those that can eat. I mean, that's the deal is that and that's what happens with the stimulus checks. I'll say this, and I do think it's unfair. I think that when you talk about people that are spending money because they absolutely have to, and it's a necessity, like, hey, I can't put food on the table, and you got people that are breaking their back to make ends meet, and it's not because they didn't do a good job of planning. It's not because they bought something they didn't need. It's not because they did something like that. It's somebody just goes, hey man, life is just rough. It's just this is a rough spot we're in, whatever. I think that's obviously different. And I think in that point, no doubt, you still don't want to get into debt just because it does make you a slave. Unfortunately, no matter how you got there, it's still enslaving you. That's Proverbs 22:7. It's unfortunate that that's there. But at the same time, there is another group, and I think that most of us would fall in this category that we go, hey, there's some of us that in that we make a decision, like I said, based off want or desire. And salespeople, that's their job, is to convince you that something that you don't really need, you really need. At the car mart, they're selling you 7 different kinds of insurances as soon as you buy the car. The reason they're doing that is because they're convincing you that something you don't really need is something that you need in order to make more money.
Well, and the American economy has been based on us spending money.
Absolutely.
That's what it's built on. It's you get it and you spend it.
Yep.
Let's talk about debt. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I think there's a practical side of this that's super, super important, is how do we get out of debt?
Yeah, how do we get out?
2 different instances in my own life. Stacy and I have worked to get out of debt. There was one point after we'd first gotten married, I was a wanter. Okay, there's things I wanted. You know what I'm saying? There was just stuff I wanted.
I'm not sure that's changed. You just gotten better.
No, that's not true. Not true. I was so there were things that I wanted that I couldn't have before we got married. And so when we began to have some type of business success, I started buying stuff.
Yeah.
And credit was just the coolest way to do it because I could get it and I could get it now.
Yeah.
And I like getting it now. So bought stuff. And we wound up at some point in our marriage where we had a lot of high interest credit card debt. We just did. And so back then I put together a strategy on my own, how I was going to pay that off. It took us about 3 years. Yeah. And we bounced it around on 0 interest credit cards. I don't know that you can do that anymore. But back then what we did was we took a credit card and they would give you a credit card for 6 months that had no interest. And I would move all my credit card, balances over to that one. And then, another card would come out and I would get it. And when it was getting close to the end, I would move it over to there and we would just keep really paying. We didn't eat out. There was tons of things that we didn't do just so we could get it paid off. Took us about 3 years. In about 3 years, everything was completely paid off. Yeah. I had like 74 credit cards. Yeah. And back then that didn't hurt your credit score. Today, if you have credit, it hurts your credit score. Yeah. And so too many credit cards, it hurts your credit score. So anyway, that's what we did. Here's what I'll say. You need a strategy. Yeah, absolutely. There is a strategy. Yeah, there's a strategy that I discovered, and I've seen. We had a second time in our marriage, by the way, where Stacy and I had run up credit card debt, and it's when we were transitioning to ministry. Had a business was going good. That business had a credit card that was associated with it, and any other time in our history, that credit had been more than enough, and then we could pay it off because the business made the money up throughout the year. Well, towards the end, when I was trying to become, full-time in ministry, it didn't work. The ends didn't meet. And so in the end, I've got this credit card that's crazy through the roof, super high interest rate credit card debt. And we did some things, what the strategy I'm about to talk to you about, which is something everybody I think can do. Yeah. And this strategy, we employed it. For us, the credit card, we were halfway through this when our house burnt down. Yeah. And so we paid our credit card debt off a little easier. So I'm not going to recommend the house fire.
Don't burn anything down.
Yeah. The house fire. And it was struck by lightning. So that everybody might know. Yeah. It wasn't that we set it afire and collected the insurance, but it was one of those things that you can't duplicate lightning.
No, that's the trick. And I will say one quick thing before you get into that. I read a stat just this week. It said only 32% of American households maintain a spending budget, meaning that 32% of households don't plan Only 32% of households in America plan to spend their money. Everybody else just spends it out. They just try to figure it out.
So do y'all have a spending budget in your house?
Yes.
You do? Montana?
Yeah, only because of Nicole.
Hold on. Let's everybody look at Montana for a second. How does that spending budget
No
work?
debt ever.
We don't budget, but we normally know what we spend a month, like on groceries and bills and things, and then whatever's left over, we spend.
So that's a solid sort of.
That's a good strategy. Does it work?
It's not like on paper. I know that Brady's wife is different. It's all on paper.
Brady, how do you maintain your budget?
No, I actually make the budget.
Oh.
I'm bad at following the budget.
But he does write it. He writes it.
So every family has a spender in the family.
Yeah.
You the spender, Brady?
Spender, Brady?
I want it and I want it now.
Brady's the spender. All right.
Montana?
Montana?
Nope, not me.
Not the spender?
Nope.
So if we ask Zach, he would say the same thing.
Yes,
There it
definitely.
is. Zach.
So Zach the spender?
Yes, he's the hobby shoe person.
Hobby.
There's that. Hobby shoes.
In your house, who's the spender?
Honestly, I think it's both of us. That's the problem. Nicole, I will say this, Nicole is a better saver than I am because she knows
So Nicole,
how money works.
I see the power that you have because I've noticed that was, look at safety here. That's safety. He doesn't want to point a finger at
No,
anybody.
addition and subtraction was not my strong suit coming out of a private school. So
Neither was
Nicole
spelling.
Spelling, yeah, it's awful. If it doesn't have a right click button, I've probably spelled it wrong. So in my thing is that I have a wife who is phenomenal at putting together budgets and making those things. We do sometimes get together and we'll spend money together because we both like to get nice things. But Nicole's the one who can really save money. She's the one who can do that. I'm the spender.
Yeah, I'm probably the spender in our family. I don't know. We equally spend pretty well. Do we have a budget?
Now, if we get mom in here, is she going to agree with your?
I don't know what she would say, and that's why
It's like
she's
the
not here today.
Newlywed game, like
Just to be clear, she's not here today for that very reason.
That's right. That other
So,
mic is empty today.
You lose credibility, when you're trying to teach something. So let me talk to you. This is what I'm going to call the debt down workshop. All right,
debt down. Let's get our debt demolition.
What I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a plan that you can work that can make this work. And by the way, we'll probably put a link in the description to this graphic if you can't see it. But anyway, basically how this works is an individual has a Lowe's payment, a Target payment. They owe their parents some money. They owe Visa. They have a car payment, and they've got some school debt, school loan stuff.
Nice.
And so total for the month, they've got a pretty healthy payment every single month. So if you look at what they owe and then you look at the minimum payments, there's a lot of stuff going on there. The way this works is basically this, is that you got to find some extra money from somewhere so that you can begin compounding money towards the debt that you owe. In this particular illustration, they found $200. Now, I want to say this on the front end. I have no doubt that some of you go, I ain't got $200. I ain't got it.
Yeah. There's been times in our lives whenever we didn't have extra bucks to just throw at something.
No, that's why you was down there at the Dollar Tree because you couldn't afford it. So anyway, but it's not important the amount. Now, obviously, the amount that you're able to put towards the debt is going to get rid of that debt more quickly.
It'll make some difference, yeah.
But the way this works is you're currently paying a certain amount of money every single month, meeting the minimum monthly payments no matter what. If you can add anything to that, here's the way that you pay that down, and here's the way that you get rid of that debt. And basically what you do is you target your smaller debts and you pay them off, and then you take the money from that smaller debt and you add it to the next debt. You roll it over to the next one. So in this instance, they have Lowe's. It's an 18% credit card thing. Their hot water tank went out.
Yeah. Or dishwasher, dryer, any of those things. Yeah.
They owe $450 on it. The minimum payment on that is $50. Now, what they're going to do, what this let's just call it a couple. What this couple or this person's done is they found $200. Yeah. And so what they're going to start with at the very beginning is they're going to add $200 to this minimum monthly payment of $50.
And some of us do say $200 a lot. I will say this: if you go in and you cancel Hulu and you cancel your gym membership and you cancel and you're like, oh, my gym membership's only $10 a month. It's like, that's true. But when you couple that with your gym membership, eating out, and your, any eating out, do not eat out at all, those types of things, you roll a few of those together, you might be surprised how much money that you actually have in there.
Well, and eating out is a big one.
It is a big.
You know.
It'll sneak up on you too.
It will.
You're like, oh yeah, we only ate out like once this month. Then you add it up, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you could cut coupons and whatever else. But let's just say, for instance, we're going to go with the $200, and you say, well, Scott, I don't have $200. If it was $50, it still works.
Yeah, because that money's going straight to principal on these loans, so it's not getting charged interest. So that loan's paying down way faster than that minimum payment.
That's exactly right. So you owe $450. They owe $450 on this loan. They're going to add this $200 payment to it, and now they're going to start sending to this loan $250.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that loan is going to go away within a couple of months.
Yeah, just a couple of months.
So so then what they do, if you'll notice, they take the same $200 and then they add the $50, which would be the minimum monthly payment, and they add this to their next debt, which is a Target credit card. Does Target have a credit card?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anyway,
when you have babies nowadays, Target, they target you. It's like, I feel like that big red circle on the front of their building was on my back.
Am I the only one that didn't know that Target had a credit card? Is that surprising to y'all?
No.
Well, how about that?
No,
Look at that. Okay. So,
legit.
Target has 18% interest. And what you do is you're going to add that $200 that you were paying on that first debt and the $50 minimum. You put those two together, that's $250. That's what this is. You start applying that plus the minimum monthly payment that you would be normally paying to this
$30 anyway.
That.
Yep.
So you're still only adding to your budget every month $200.
Yeah. So correct. So $200, the $200 that's here is literally not changing. So that's right. You're just rolling it over. Right. You're going to pay the same amount every month. You're just rolling it into different debts.
And so when you take that $250 from the credit debt that you paid off the previous month or whatever, and the $30 that's the minimum payment on the Target card, you put those together, that gives you a total of $280 a month you're applying towards your Target debt, which is 18% interest, and it's only a $650 debt.
Which would mean 3-ish months and it's gone.
A little less than 3 months. There you go. You've got that one paid for. Now, guess what you do? You do the exact same thing to the next debt, which is to your parents. Which, by the way, some of you would go, "Well, they're my parents." No, listen. If you told them you're going to pay them back, pay them back.
Pay them back.
You know what I'm saying?
And what is that? You're talking about. What is it?
Nothing. Just saying. And
I paid you back. Don't you play games?
Don't worry about it.
Pastor
It's not a big deal.
Scott,
not a big deal.
Listen.
0 interest. We'll owe them for the rest of our life.
Listen. It's not in writing. I'm just kidding.
So
You're good. Keep going.
So what they did was they take the $250, which would include both would include the two previous debts, and then they add the $30 minimum monthly payment from Target. Put all that together, it makes a $280 payment plus that $200 that they've been putting with all of these, right?
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. The $280 includes the minimum monthly payments and the $200 initially added to it. This $200 is the minimum monthly payment on this debt that they owe their parents, which is $1,600.
Yes.
You put all that together, now they have $480 that they're putting and targeting towards this particular debt to their parents. And they're just going to keep hammering that debt. Bam, bam, bam.
Yep. Well, and you got to think, what is this? We're talking about from the month they started, you're talking about Lowe's at $450, Target at $650. We're probably 5 months in, and they've already paid off two major, and this will make you feel good too. You're like, hey, I paid something off.
Right.
It's done.
That's right.
Throw a little party. Don't spend any money, but throw a little have a little celebration, and high five, get a cupcake.
After you pay your parents back, have a celebration. Pay those parents. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, nonetheless, let's move on. Not a big deal. And so you get the parents paid off $1,600, putting $480 towards that. You're talking about less than 4 months. So three months.
A few months. So you're talking about we're less than a year. You've already paid off half.
Boom.
Of that.
Same thing. You do the same thing again. Again, the minimum monthly payments, plus your $200 that you infused into this, plus the minimum monthly payment for that credit card for that month puts $510 towards your Visa, which is $1,800. The next thing you know, that's paid off, and you go on down the line. Here's the bottom line. Is this going to take some time? It is.
Yeah.
Debt is this issue. If you're going to get out of debt, you have to have a strategy. You have to have some means of here is what I'm going to work towards to get out of this debt. Now, I want you to think about this. This couple, individual, whoever it is, they're going to wind up with some additional money every single month. If you take these minimum monthly payments, and I don't know that I even added those up, but 50, 80, 280, 310, 710, 89.
They're at Visa. At the Visa, they're at $480 a month extra.
So you're talking about $1,100 a month they're going to have left over. You know, for their adult. Then you call it adult debt, Montana. They could have that. They could live in a better house or whatever. Or you could just put that money back. You could have savings or whatever else. this is a great strategy. You don't get out. You get it. You can get into debt without a strategy, but you probably won't get out of debt without a strategy.
Well, and focus is the main thing. And I mean, if you don't, and this is the type of thing that you need to sit down at the kitchen table. If you're married, sit down with your spouse.
Yeah.
And you guys together write this stuff out. What do you?
You
owe?
definitely got to
do you
sit down
owe
with
it,
the spenders like Brady. You got to sit down and say, "Look, we're putting a hump in the
Brady would
brake."
probably write up his own plan. He just wouldn't follow
Yeah,
it.
just don't follow it.
It's like
It's easy to write it out.
it's easy to write it. He knows what to do.
Listen,
He just
I know
gotta do
exactly
it.
what you're saying. Listen, it's just like weight loss, y'all. All of these discipline things are so stinking hard.
But I do think that if you sit down with your spouse and write these things out in writing, because this is going to take not only focus, this is going to take sacrifice.
It is.
Because when you get halfway through, when you're talking about getting to this Visa card and having $480 in the bank every single month that is not necessarily having to go to minimum payments, you got to start talking to yourself and going, hey, no, we're not going to go out and eat out extra. No, we're paying off debt. No, that's what we're doing. And having those conversations, I think, is really important early on.
So the difference is this: if you just paid these minimum monthly payments on these cards, like they said, it would take you 120 months to pay them off.
Wow.
So you're talking about 10 years.
10 years.
So 10 years of payments on this. Now, here's the other thing. If you do this debt snowball or this debt down workshop, if you did it, everything's paid off in 21 months.
Wow.
So it's 99 months different.
Okay.
I mean, so you're talking about saving yourself 99 months. Now, here's what's cool. The additional $1,110 invested at 4% for 99 months would yield you $129,539.94. Now, getting 4% interest today is not the easiest thing in the world anymore because it's hard to get 4%. It's possible though. We have some investments.
There's some big places right now, especially right now.
Yeah, we're getting close to that 3.9% on some of the things that we've put in there for retirement and different things. But anyway, my point is
Don't just go buy stock. Okay,
Yeah.
do something better. But you can buy some
unless you got into it early. If you got into it early, then
it wasn't a bad deal.
Yeah, tithe.
Get out.
Tithe.
Get out. No, I'm just kidding.
So here's the point. The point is that you could pay that. You could be paying on this debt for 120 months, paying all that interest, paying off things that you bought. Think about this. Whatever you bought at Lowe's 10 years from now, I promise you,
It's not working.
no,
Yeah.
no. What that Target?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I promise you.
Your kid's grown out of it by then.
Oh yeah,
Keep
your
going.
kids. Hopefully your kids are grown. You know, they're already off to prison or whatever.
Whoa.
But I'm kidding, just
aggressive.
kidding. But the other thing that I thought was interesting is if you took that money that you saved. Now again, you're not spending any more money other than the $200 that you added to it every month. You're not if you took that
For the same term.
for the same term,
120
and
months.
you put that for the 99 months that would have gone towards those, you put that in an account or some type of interest bearing whatever investment that you're getting 4%.
Yep.
You're gonna at the end yield $129, almost $130,000.
Yeah.
Now Montana was saying that you can't buy your own house, but this person could have bought their house. It may not have
Well,
been
after 10 years.
No,
but
I
yes.
said a high schooler could not
That's true.
leave high school
She
and buy their
did.
own
No,
house.
that's I guarantee.
At least my high schooler can't.
No, my house killer. Yeah, I don't even want to go into that. That's a whole different subject for another day. But that's debt. That's a strategy.
That's that.
That's a strategy
way
for
to
debt.
Get out of debt. And I think the biggest two things when it comes to getting out of debt is focus and discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. I think
I
it's
agree.
focus and discipline and going, okay, we've got a plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And then from there, it's discipline to actually do the plan. But if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. So if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, whatever that little saying is that somebody important probably said
Well,
once.
that's really good. I like that.
Yeah, but it's the truth though, is that, you know, if you don't put together a plan, then ultimately your debt is just going to continue to sit on top of you no matter how much you want it to be gone, and you may gripe about it and you may throw fits about it or whatever, but it's really difficult to get rid of it. And it's okay to start small. I think that's the other thing, is that's like you said, if you don't have $200, if you have $40 a month, man, makes a difference. It's kicking a dent in that stuff, and you're paying it off way faster.
Well, and I think one of the other things that we discuss quite consistently is, so what is prevention for this kind of debt? If you look at those credit cards we were looking at a minute ago, the credit debt that these people had, you had Target, you had Lowe's and stuff. So let's just say, for instance, and most of the things that they owed money on, the majority of them were under $1,000.
Yeah, they weren't big time. Yeah.
So
that's probably one accident.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so one of the things that we discuss with people when we're talking about, not having money run your life, but you running your life, and money being a tool that serves you as you serve God and other people, is having a little bit of savings.
Yeah, emergency fund for instance, like the Lowe's or Target would have easily been a refrigerator going out.
It had been.
a refrigerator goes out and it's $400.
Yeah.
I mean, at the minimum, I would think. And if you get a decent one that looks pretty good, you're going to spend $650 to $850 getting a nice refrigerator.
You take and put $1,000 back. So the way we look at money is like this, and here's kind of how it trickles down for us, as believers. Is first and foremost, we're going to tithe on our income.
Absolutely.
And that's 10%. The first 10%. You know, we return the first 10% because we believe as believers that all that we have, God gave to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we return the first 10% saying, hey, God, we know that you gave this to us, and we believe that. The second thing, the reason why we tithe, and I have people ask this question, well, Scott, I owe money. Would you tithe before you paid off your debt because I'm barely making ends meet? And I would say absolutely.
Yes.
And the reason being is that when I tithe, it unleashes God's blessing on what I have.
Absolutely.
The opposite's also true. The tithe belongs to God. It is
When
His
I steal
possession.
it,
That's right.
It's not working in my benefit.
So I can either have 90% of what my income is and have God bless it and favor it and make it do things it couldn't do otherwise, or I can have 100% of my income and it all be cursed. So basically, that's it. So you can have
it's like
one.
Pirates of the Caribbean with the gold crest.
Yeah, you can have
just leave them alone.
One or the
don't
other.
touch them.
So the first thing that we do is we tithe. We put God first and we tithe, and that's 10% of our income. Now, second to that, what we would do after that is so we've got the other 90% of our income. In my family, what we like to do is we like to put back a percentage of that 90%. Now, I realize that some people are like, hey, Scott, you don't understand. It's taking all 90% to make ends meet.
Sure.
And you know what? We're going to, maybe in days to come, we'll talk about strategies for your money to make money for you, strategies for investment, strategies for you to, some side gig stuff and stuff that people might need to look at. But if it's possible, rather than maxing out what income God leaves with you, put some back. When you get about $1,000 put back in a bank account, that's going to cover the vast majority of the normal emergencies that you're going to face.
Tire pops on the car or whatever it is.
What we do in our family, in my home, is we desire to have, especially in the very beginning, our desire was to have enough savings to cover the highest deductible we had in insurance. So and for us, it was $2,500 on our health insurance because we didn't have like health insurance through like, it's terrible. Let me just say that. So it's $2,500. And so we wanted to have $2,500 in the bank and
to be able to pay that deductible if something were to happen.
And if something else happens and some of that money's gone, then we put back in there. But once that money's in that account, you don't have to put any more back unless you want to. If you want more of a savings because you're wanting to save up for something, you can. But so for us, we tithe. Secondly, we wanted to have about $2,500 put back.
So would you do that? So we would tithe first.
Yep.
And then you're saying even before you start the debt snowball, focus on having emergency savings.
I would, and let me say why.
Okay.
Is because that in the midst of you trying to do this debt snowball or the debt down workshop, whatever you want to call it, in the midst of you doing that, other things could happen.
If you get slapped with another,
exactly.
You have another bill now.
Exactly. Yeah. If you just make it a point to have that money back in savings, and remember, when we talk about this emergency fund, this is not savings like for retirement that you're constantly having to put into.
Sure.
This is money that you're putting back because of something could happen.
It's a break glass in case of emergency kind of fund. Yeah.
And I would definitely put that back. And then after that,
start the debt snowball.
I would start the debt snowball work.
With whatever money that you were putting back into savings, you could probably just, whatever that was, if it was $40, $50, whatever, or if it was a couple $100 a month, you could just roll that into your debt snowball and knock it all at the same time.
And you start paying that debt down. And once that debt's paid down, one of the beautiful things that I think that people overlook is I'm tithing.
Yep.
I have the opportunity to do even more. I mean, I could, like for us, we sponsor children in different parts of the world.
The Everywhere Project. We're building a building in Cabot right now. I mean, we're talking about a building that's going to reach thousands of people for years and years and years to come. And we're allowing people to go above and beyond their tithe. That's not your tithe. That's above and beyond your tithe to give in order to build that building so that you can leave a legacy that really changes the world for all time.
That's good.
That's not, that'll be something that's here when you're gone.
That's good.
That's an investment that I think is where, because a lot of times we talk about like ROI or like return on investment. We're like, we want to invest in like I say, a penny stock or whatever to be able to make more money back. But at the same time, you sit there and you go, man, when you invest in the kingdom, you're talking about,
that's right.
Lives changing for eternity. These are investments. These are returns that you'll get for all time now, and they can't be taken away. You can't be like, oh, well, GameStop, stopped going up and now it's going down. It's like, it's actually that, when you invest in the kingdom, these will be returns that you'll get for eternity.
That's right.
And I think in that, though, you can't do that though if you're so strapped with debt that you have no extra money.
No, right.
You don't get to make those investments, and then you have to sit out of some of the greatest spiritual movements of your lifetime. I mean, Joseph of Arimathea is the guy that I think about. That he's the guy.
When do you think about Joseph?
I think about Joseph of Arimathea.
When?
That's his name.
I know why. I just thought that was I thought that was pretty ambiguous. Just kind of like
I want to throw it out
think
there.
of Joseph of Arimathea.
Well, I think of Joseph of Arimathea when I'm talking about this scenario, because Joseph is a guy that when Jesus dies on the cross, okay?
Yeah.
Jesus dies on the cross.
tomb.
Joseph has a tomb.
That's right.
Joseph has a tomb. You know what? That tomb was not cheap.
Yeah.
That's an expensive tomb. And Joseph had that tomb. He had already put himself in a financial place where Joseph owned a tomb.
That's
and
actually,
Joseph of Arimathea is only mentioned once in Scripture, and it is because when Jesus Christ dies on the cross and is taken down, they put him in Joseph's tomb.
He has something to give.
He has something to give. He's ready to rock and roll. He's put that together.
That's really good.
He's put that together in time, and he has set himself up to be ready, and he got to make an investment, and it got him in the Bible, which is awesome. But even more awesome, he is the guy who takes care of the body of our Savior.
That's good.
And he only got to do that. You don't see Peter getting to do that. You don't see James getting to do that. You don't see Bartholomew, Paul, none of those guys. Joseph of Arimathea, and you would never know his name. You would never know who he was, but he was a guy who put himself in a financial place that was successful. And from there, he was able to make it one of the greatest investments in the kingdom ever.
So let's track this a minute, because I think this is really, really good. I never really didn't think about it. But you think about how that if you have something that you can put in God's hands, how God uses it. Peter has a boat.
Yep, Peter has a boat.
And Peter puts his boat in God's hands. Jesus pulls out to the water and he teaches the crowd.
Yep. And they catch some fish.
You remember this little kid that's got a lunch?
Yep, little kid's got a lunch.
You know, he's got like a can of sardines and a can of Pringles. You
he's
know,
the only one who brought one.
Yeah.
All the adults didn't prepare.
That's
and
right.
He did.
That's Ian.
Yeah,
and my son would be that way, because he's always going to have a lunch no matter where you go. He's always going to have food. That's really good. I like that. That's good. I never really thought about that. That one of the things that a savings does for us, one of the things of good stewardship does for us, is it makes us available for God to use us in a great way.
Well, and I think the thing is that, again, it's the desire for freedom. And for us, money is a tool. It's not the goal. Freedom is the goal. I want freedom. I want financial freedom. I want to be able to not only buy the things that I want to be able to buy when I need to buy them, but also to be able to make the investments that I want to make, and not just investments in, like I say, in stocks or whatever else. Not to say those things are bad. I think you should make those investments. Like that, those are great. Have a Roth IRA or whatever you want to do. But at the same time, I can't make the investments in God's kingdom that I want to make if I'm so strapped with debt that I have no money left over.
Well, you know, if you look at it like this, the way we use money is really three different veins. So either we use money with a debt mentality, which is basically paying for yesterday's, expenses and spending. Then there's wealth.
Yep.
That's the cash on hand. That's what I actually own and have right now.
Yep.
So yesterday I didn't overspend, so today I have something.
Leftovers, yep.
But then there's investments, which is taking today's money and throwing it into the future.
Tomorrow, yeah.
And you stop and think about it, there's retirement, there's all kinds of things like that. So I could, put money into that. There's a savings that we could put, but only God gives us the opportunity to invest and throw it way over into eternity.
Absolutely.
So you think about Joseph of Arimathea, that tomb, which is such a great perspective, which I thought, how random is that? He's about to talk about Joseph of Arimathea, but that's really good.
He thought I was losing it.
See, that was good. I was like, that's solid. That's solid right there.
I swear I have a point.
I'm going to use that.
It's here somewhere.
No, but you look at Joseph of Arimathea and you think about anytime you talk about Easter.
Yeah.
Anytime we talk about the greatest event in human history, Jesus Christ getting up from the dead.
Joseph is mentioned.
Well, not only that, but what is the image that you normally associate that with? You associate it with a tomb with a stone rolled away. Yeah. And so that guy made himself available. And today, that's the one thing about investing in the kingdom of God, is that our gift into the kingdom constantly and eternally will be used by God.
Absolutely.
And there's no doubt.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, we had a bad year. Now you're only going to get 2%. It's like, nope. When you give to God and you put something in God's hands, it will not diminish in value. It is going to be used for eternity, and the rewards for it will be never ending.
It's good. That's good. That's good. Good. Really good. So some debt, we're going to be dealing with some debt. I feel like that there's going to be some questions about that. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think we're experts on this. And I think there's some resources out there. I do think that the Dave Ramsey thing, I think there's some people that look at that, and I think there's some programs out there that you can look at. I really think, rather than making it super complicated, I think it's kind of like, I'll put it this way. I've never lost weight effectively. All right.
Okay.
That's just never happened. But I have talked to a lot of people who want to help me lose weight, and every single one of them that I talk to is like, "Hey, don't overcomplicate it. Don't make this. Don't make this into more. When you say, okay, every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to start running 6 miles every morning. And at nighttime I'm going to go do this.
Push-ups at night.
Yeah, and then I'm going to
run an Ironman in a month.
Yeah, I'm going to eat 2 crackers and whatever else, whatever. So you make
put too much on your plate and you can't do it.
You won't do it. And I think the thing with debt is the same thing. And I think you have to look long-term goals. I think one of the things we do that's not so good is that we overestimate what can happen in the short term and we underestimate what can happen in the long term.
That's a great point.
When it comes to the issue of debt, let's look at it in the long term.
Yeah.
You may not be having the victory dance in a couple of days because you've chosen to get rid of this, but you are eventually, and it's worth it, to not be underneath the scrutiny of that, the debt that you owe. So
absolutely.
So it's a good thing. So, as we move forward, our church is going to be talking about,
finances
we're going to spend a whole month talking about, we're going to be talking about investments. We're going to be talking about how your money can work for you, which is really important.
Well, yeah. And our desire with this series is not just to talk about how you should or shouldn't spend your money, but to talk through, how can you put yourself in a place personally with your personal finances? How can you put yourself in a place that is extremely advantageous for you and for the kingdom and for all the things that God is doing?
Yeah.
You having your family in a disadvantageous place financially is not good for you. It's not good for you. It's not good for me. It's stressful. It causes problems in your marriage. It's the number one most reason for divorce is finances.
That's right. The stress and pressure from
it kills more marriages. Finances, or poor management of finances, kills more marriages than adultery does, which is mind-boggling, but it's the truth. I mean, people struggle with finances, and I think for us, we struggle with it too. I think we've struggled with it a lot. We don't have the expertise on the, maybe all the little tools and nuances of the stock market and whatever else. But I will say this, God's word is very clear about how we prioritize things, where our focus is, how that works, what mindset you bring to the table when you're talking about stepping into really losing the debt and things like that. And I think that's a big deal. And I think that'll be a great series this month.
I think one of the things that I remember going back, Al Graham,
AG.
Yeah. Al's such a friend. But I remember there was a time Al and I were working out, which I know that's a surprise even in the statement of itself. That's even more surprising than
Arkansas.
Yeah, that's more surprising than Joseph of Arimathea. But yeah, so we were working out together, and Al had just gone through a season of his life where he had downsized a lot of stuff. He downsized the house he lived in, the cars they drove, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I remember talking to him, and he had owned his own business, and he had just moved out of that, and there was just a lot going on with that. And I just asked him, I said, man, how are things? How are you feeling? He says, you know what? I've never felt better.
Yeah.
And I remember I said, what do you mean? He said, dude, I don't have this stuff hanging over my head no more.
Yeah.
He said, you know what?
It's nice.
He said, I could own something and it was in my driveway and I couldn't enjoy it because I was constantly thinking about how am I going to make that? Yeah. And he said, I was chasing that stuff around. He said, I lay down at night. He said, man, I sleep all night long. And he said, you know what? It's just that bed's just as comfortable as the one that was in the other house. He said, man, I love it.
It brings me back to Luke 12:15. He says, then he said, this is Jesus speaking. He says, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own.
Yeah.
Life is not measured by how much you own. Now, Jesus saying that does make me think there are things that life is measured by.
Yeah.
There are. Him saying that money wasn't it, or what you own wasn't it, that's not what your life is measured by. Is not saying there wasn't something that your life is measured by.
That's good.
And I think Al's discovered that, the things that he owned wasn't what his life was measured by. It wasn't. It maybe the joy that he's even feeling or was feeling then wasn't brought on by those things. That he just connected it to those things in his mind. And then when he lost them, or when he traded them down or downsized or whatever, he's like, oh, actually, I feel just as good without that thing.
Well, and we had a buddy, and it's not just about debt. It's even about the pursuit of money.
Yeah.
We had a good friend that he had gotten promoted to an upper level executive position of a large company here in Little Rock.
Yeah.
And making good money. When I say good money, making more money than all of us. Yeah. And so, but he worked all the time, super stressed out, and he kept that job for about 2.5 years. And I remember when, in those jobs, a lot of times you're going to get let go. You can't, it's like a coaching job. It's like trying to coach it, like LSU or something. You're going to lose that job. And so he lost his job. And I remember when it happened, I was like, man, how are you doing? He's like, it's the best day of my life.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you,
so much
he said, man, it's the best day.
Yeah.
He said, dude, I can sit on the floor with my kids.
Yeah.
I am not waiting. I'm not trying to make that monthly, quota. He said, dude, I'm enjoying myself. And so I do believe that sometimes we get so, kind of worked into a corner with the things that we think we have to have, or, the curse from our parents, you've got to have a bigger house or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a place where when you downsize, or maybe when you change your perspective and maybe you change your pursuits, that all of a sudden you catch yourself going, gosh, I've been missing out on living.
On a lot of
I'm
stuff.
getting to live.
Absolutely.
And there's experiences I'm having. There's relationships that have been suffering. My relationship to God, and I don't remember, it was a pastor who was telling me this story. He said that he had a really wealthy guy in his church. Oh, I don't remember who it was anyway. He said he had a real wealthy guy in his church, and this guy in his church, he said, I told him, he said, man, he said, when I didn't make that much money, 10% really wasn't that much. It wasn't that big of a deal. Tithing wasn't a hard thing. He said, but later, he said, now, he said, I make really a lot of money.
And all of a sudden, that 10% is real big.
He said, it's big. He said, he said, now my tithe is, it's got several digits in it. And he said, pastor said, well, you want me to pray for you? He said, absolutely. He said, I need some prayer. He said, okay. And they started praying. The pastor said, dear Lord, I just pray that you'll take all this money away from this man so he don't have this burden anymore. So it'll be easier for him to serve you and love you. And
that guy's like, take it back.
And the guy's like, wait, what?
That's not what I meant.
Yeah. But I think that's where we are sometimes. We get, maybe we get so hemmed in with what we're trying to get, have, own, whatever, that we forget that there's this life to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some things to enjoy.
Absolutely.
And again, my heart goes out to, I believe that there's a wave of people that no doubt are struggling, that financially you're just trying to make it. And this is not about you going, hey man, do I want to invest in this stock or that, or do I want to drive a Bugatti or what?
Sure.
It's really about, hey, I'm trying to figure out, can I, buy Cheez-Its this week?
Dinner on Thursday?
Yeah. And so, but I will say this, I think there are options that God gives us to downsize some things, and we might be able to figure out some things as we go along. And so, most of us struggle with the want.
Sure. Well, I think there's points where people are in survival and they've got to just survive. And I think that, and it stinks. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable, but we've all been there. We've all had moments where you kind of just had to lock it down and go, hey, when Nicole and I had our twins, we got slapped with a pretty big set of medical bills. I mean, I thought it was 2 for the price of 1. That's a lie. It's 2 for the price of 3. And they hit us with that. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can't pay that, and we had to talk to debt collectors and things like that. It was a really scary kind of time for us. And we had some savings, we had some emergency funds, and it wasn't enough, but we sat down and we just really had to make some decisions and do some things that that we wouldn't have done otherwise, but we had to do it in order to kind of survive. And I think there is a season of life, and I think that's okay, that you gotta survive, man. And there's times where you're doing everything you can. You've broke your back, and you own nothing that you can downsize, and you have nothing that you can do differently. You're doing everything you can. You're just trying to make it. That's one type of debt. And I think in that moment, hey, you just gotta do what you can, and we gotta figure it out for this season. But then there's another kind of debt that I would say that I engage in now, that's more like, hey, I just want that thing. It's really nice. I'd like to have it now. I don't want to wait 6 months. I don't want to wait a year. I don't want to wait 3 years. I want to get it now. And, it's just one of those things where we have to constantly make those decisions and sit down and enjoy those things. So,
even chipping away, for those who do find themselves kind of in a corner, just chipping away at that debt. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you're making much headway.
Right.
But
it's $20 a month or whatever. It's just not enough. It's making a difference.
And there's a lady in our church, single mom, and she posted something a couple, it's been several months ago, and she posted a few things that I thought was really kind of cool. One of the things she posted the fact that, today I just paid this off, and she was showing this credit card was getting cut. I just paid this off. And I thought, man, that's cool. And,
big steps.
And I remember when she finally finished that out and said, look, I'm done with this. I think if we can keep a focus on the future, and one of the things that I would, encourage all of us to do is look out in the future and think about what is it going to be like in that day when I don't have this hanging over my head. Absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing. It really is. It is. So, today we're going to wrap it up. And one of the things that I really want you to know is that we love you and we want to pray for you.
Absolutely.
And so when you leave a comment, we go back, look at every single one of those, and we answer every single one of those. Every single person, you guys are important to us. You mean something to us. Absolutely. And we're grateful to be able to share this time with you, and we're excited about what's happening. Some of you have some ideas. I guarantee that you know more about something that we've talked about today than we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you guys could unpack that with us. And I would just really encourage you to leave a comment. Let us hear. Maybe there's some resources that you know about that we didn't know about.
Link them in the comments.
Yeah,
Link
put them in
down there for more people to see.
The the other thing is that maybe you were encouraged today. If you were, share this with some people. Let some other people hear it, see it. There's plenty of people who are struggling with the issues of money and where does it belong and how do we keep it in our life and those kind of things. And so we'd love for you to share that with us. But I want to say this, I am grateful that we had this time today, and I'm grateful we got to hang out with you guys. And I pray that you are, until we meet next time, that you're blessed, your socks are blessed off of you, and life treats you well. So we look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you.